Hi, my name is Chris Strahan. Welcome to another episode of Drinks from Eddie Muller's Noir Bar. Each week, I take a chapter from the book Eddie Muller's Noir Bar, Cocktails Inspired by the World of Film Noir, and I look at the film in that chapter and make the drink associated with it. Today, we are looking at the film and the drink of the same name, Angel Face. Now, often in film noir, you run into films where the backstory of the film is more interesting than the film itself. This is not the case here, but that's mostly because it was a very good film. If you want the full backstory, I would recommend that you go to YouTube, search for Angel Face movie or Angel Face 1952 on YouTube, and you'll probably find a video for Eddie Muller's introduction for when they showed it on Noir Alley. He goes into the full backstory that I don't want to repeat here. The very, very, very abridged version of it was that sexual harassment did not start with Harvey Weinstein. It had a grand tradition going back into the Golden Age, and one of the biggest offenders of the Golden Age was Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes hired Gene Simmons, put her as a contract player, and then when she wouldn't come across, he decided to punish her. She had to sue to get out of her contract, but one of the agreements in the suit was that they required that she needed to make at least 3 movies at RKO. Gene Simmons had another stipulation put in that there would be a time limit on this because Howard Hughes had a habit of making films and then not releasing them, making films and calling for endless reshoots and things like that. So by putting a time limit on it, that meant that it would actually come to an end in a certain amount of time. She made 2 films at RKO under Howard Hughes, and then by the time her contract was almost up, they only had about a month left to make Angel Face. And Howard Hawks borrowed from MGM Otto Preminger. And Otto Preminger was known as a tyrant, and he got Preminger to do the film specifically to torture Gene Simmons. And if you want the backstory, go to YouTube, look at Eddie Muller's Noir Alley intro for this film, and if you might want to look at the outro's great too, but if you haven't seen the film, I would wait until after you see the film before you look at the outro. Now, for me, looking at this film, well, let me start by a little bit of the storyline. Robert Mitchum is a former race car driver, former soldier. He is now working, driving an ambulance for a living. But his real interest is in sports cars, and he is saving all of his money to start a garage that caters to high-end foreign sports cars, specifically in customizing them for people who want to race them. He goes out on a call. He meets Gene Simmons. She is obviously very, very hot, but it becomes clear very, very early on that she is pretty crazy too. And so I kind of want to use the hot crazy matrix to discuss this film. Now, the hot crazy matrix goes back to an episode of How I Met Your Mother from about 15 years ago. But about 5 years ago, somebody on YouTube kind of revamped it a little bit. And the revamped version of it introduced some misogyny and some other things that I don't like about it. But I think it's a good starting point for this discussion, so let's look at the hot crazy matrix. First of all, I think it's unrealistic because it says you should never get together with a woman who is under a 5 on the hotness scale. But there are a whole lot of men who are under a 5 on the hotness scale. In fact, I'd wager to say that there are more men who are under a 5 than there are women. So the other thing is there are many men who are above 5 on the hotness scale who have personality problems that would bring them back to a 5. So unless these guys can find women who like dating assholes, they're probably going to be in the 0 to 5 range on the hotness scale anyway. The other thing I don't like about this version of it is that it's very misogynistic. It assumes that all women are at least 4 on the crazy scale. And my own opinion on this is that women, well, all genders are probably, most people are probably above a 4 on the crazy scale, regardless of your gender. I think that if I've met a few people who were like a 2 or a 3 on the crazy scale, but not very many of those. I'm sure there exist people who are a 0 or a 1 on the crazy scale, but I don't think I've met any of those. But I think to say that women have a certain level of craziness that is more than a man's craziness, I think that is just ridiculous. The other thing is it assumes that if a woman is between an 8 and a 10 on the hotness scale, and she's between a 4 and a 5 on the crazy scale, that just doesn't exist, which is indicated by a unicorn in that one. The other thing is that it says if somebody is between 8 and 10 on the hotness scale and under 4 on the crazy scale, that must be a transsexual, which is just homophobic, transsexual, transphobic, I guess is the term we should use. So I've gone back to more of a simplified version of the hot crazy matrix to discuss this, and it's mostly because I used a gradient to show that it's kind of a range, and it's going to be more of personal preference. Somebody might be a 6 and they want to have crazy and they need another 6 crazy, so they mesh well together. Some people might have a lower tolerance for crazy, so they might be a 5 and they want somebody who is a 3 on the crazy scale. Conversely, somebody else might be a 5 on the crazy and they're okay with their partner being a little bit crazy, so they might be okay with a 7 on the scale. None of this has anything to do with gender. And we have Jean Simmons, and she kind of enters the scale with about a 9 on the hotness scale and with about an 8.5 on the crazy scale. But throughout the movie, she starts rising up in the crazy scale. And Robert Mitchum, I think, has enough common sense and street smarts to see this happening, and he starts backing away from her. But then she does something which takes her crazy up to 11, which is basically the theoretical limit to human craziness, just like 11 is the theoretical limit to volume on guitar amplifiers. But by the time he realizes this, he has been arrested, he may go to the gas chamber, and he has to embrace her craziness just to survive the situation. And in doing so, Robert Mitchum ends up flying too close to her craziness, and his wax wings melt, and he goes plummeting back to Earth. Yes, that's right. I have made an analogy that links from Spinal Tap all the way to Icarus. I am so proud of myself. The film is excellent. Otto Preminger does a great job directing it. If you do watch it, I would definitely recommend checking out Eddie Muller's outro video on this film. He pointed out a lot of things that I really wouldn't have noticed had I not had not just listened to it right before watching it. The cast was great. Robert Mitchum was really at the top of his game. Jean Simmons is obviously gorgeous, but she was very good in it, playing just batshit crazy. It had some other great performances. Leon Ames, who played the district attorney in The Postman Always Rings Twice, was in it. He's very good playing the lawyer who ends up trying to get them off. And also has a very small part for my favorite African-American actress Teresa Harris. She plays a nurse in this. So there we go. Now, the drink, the Angel Face, goes back to the 1930s and the Savoy cocktail book, which I just purchased. It starts with, let's see, well, it starts with a shaker. So let's prep our shaker. Now, we start with an ounce each of gin. This little bottle is a bottle my wife brought me back from British Columbia, Okanagan, something like that. I will put the name of the distiller in the description. But I figured, hey, I have never tried this, so why not now? The next ingredient is Calvados, and this is an apple, kind of an apple brandy. And we're doing 1 ounce each of all 3 ingredients here. And then the last ingredient we have is apricot brandy, which surprisingly was one of the hardest things for me to find. It seems that apricot brandy, maybe it's an old lady's drink, and although old ladies who used to drink it don't get it anymore, I don't know. I found it surprising that something that I've heard of my whole life was that this hard to find, but I finally was able to find a bottle of it. And so we have 1 ounce of apricot brandy, and we're going to shake it. Okay, and strain it into a chilled coupe glass. Okay, and for the garnish, we've got a twist of lemon peel. So I'm going to drop that right in there. And here we go. Cheers. Never tried this one before. Oh, wow. It's very sweet, but not just sweet. You're you're getting the apricot, but I think the brandy is kind of tempering the apricot. And you're getting a little bit of something from the gin. I'm not quite sure how I even would describe it, but it's very tasty. Anyway, next week we are going to do a film I've seen a gazillion times, possibly the first film noir I ever watched, The Maltese Falcon. I'm not sure whether I saw The Maltese Falcon or Double Indemnity first. I saw both of them in the same film class, and I'm not sure which one was first in the semester, but definitely The Maltese Falcon was one of the first film noirs I ever saw. The drink with that one is the Hammett Martini, so we'll be doing that one next week. So, from the back of Eddie Muller's Noir Bar, we'll say cheers.